On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk CEDIA's new marketing VP, how to work from home, as well as KBIS issues. All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 263, Lead with Work from Home.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Blackwire Designs, the go-to distributor for the CI industry with an extensive product lineup backed by unmatched sales and system support. Anytime dealers need it, even after hours or on the weekend.
Welcome to this episode of our ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matt D. Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week, I'm pleased to be joined by the one and only Mr. Jason Knott. He is the Chief Content Officer at CE Pro. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, for showing up today. Due to a couple other guests being ill, unfortunately, hopefully they're feeling better. Snowstorms and all the fun stuff. You're stuck with Jason and I for most of the show today. I got something special for you all at the end, but really it's just Jason and I. We're just hanging out. So, Jason, my friend, let's kick this off. CEDIA hired a new VP of Marketing, Communications, and Research. Her name is Melissa Getchie. She is, as I said, the new VP of Marketing. She's got 20 years of experience across a variety of verticals, I would say, in the marketing space. Jason, let's chat for a second, and we're going to be real. Is one of the big complaints that you hear about CEDIA a lot from integrators is that communication is tough, and we'll kind of leave it at that. I'm not going to dig too deep into that. But communication seems to be tough. The manner in which communication goes in and comes out, it seems to be a challenge for a lot of integrators at times. What does bringing in Melissa, specifically someone with her pedigree, but also someone who's not in the industry, I think that's a good thing. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And all the things that I've heard about Melissa is that she's highly qualified and fantastic. So I'm really looking forward to working with her. And I agree with you. It's a great thing that they brought in somebody with a clean slate who can look at the market with fresh eyes and maybe say, why aren't we doing this? Or why haven't we tried that? And, CEDIA does a lot of really, really good things for the industry. And I think a lot of integrators don't know a lot of these really good things that they do for the industry. And it's a matter of getting that message out, but also being open to their input. And from what I've heard, working for an association is really difficult. You have 2,000 bosses, and one person calls and complains about something, and you have to cater to the whims or the needs of that particular member. And so it's not an easy job, that's for sure. And I look forward to working with her on it.
Yeah, I know in my time of working with CEDIA on a volunteer side, it that did seem to be one of the frustrations and one of the confusion things is, and I dealt with it. What you'd get harassed about from one member was something that you were getting praised about by a different member. If you had to pick like two key things that you hope to see improve, what would it be? We're going to send this to her as a primer.
No, I think one of the things that CEDIA doesn't do enough is tout what their members do. And they've just started doing this. And I know I've had conversations with Ed Wenk about this and the projects that the members do out in the field. And unfortunately, all the stuff that gets the press is the 6-figure over the top one for the celebrity type stuff. Those are fantastic jobs, but we know what's happened during the pandemic of how many integrators who were all deemed essential workers for a reason, who were vital in going in and bringing home networks to people all across the country, all across Canada, obviously too. And that's an important role that kind of just was, I don't think anybody in the industry, anybody outside of the industry knows that this industry was the provider of. So that would be a great message to get out. And I think also maybe just some of the operational stuff. I know it's very frustrating for CE Pro. We write articles about specific business management tips, sales and marketing tips, operational hiring, firing, human resources, really, really good stuff. And those things do not get read as much as the item about the widget that goes behind the TV on the mount. Those will get 3 times the rate. So it is a very tech-centric industry, but I hope that she'll be able to open up the eyes to the members of how important it is about these management and operational tactics that CEDIA can provide to them.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement on that. I will say as cool as those large projects are, they're not the bread and butter of what the industry does. And I as well would love to see more highlighting, I guess, of some of the day-to-day projects where something cool was done. And, if you follow a wide variety of people on Instagram in the business, I'm always seeing something where I go, oh, that I never thought of that. That is awesome. I'm going to totally steal that and take credit for it.
The interesting thing is, a smaller company probably gets more out of CEDIA than maybe a larger company does. When they're just getting their feet on the ground and they're looking for that key peer-to-peer operational advice. So there's got to be a way, I think, for CEDIA to grow with the companies and as they get larger, because the disgruntled members that I hear from are usually larger companies, not the 1 or 2 man shops who I think really, really rely on CEDIA as a vital resource.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Jason, let's move on to a story that comes to us from CE Pro. You might have heard of it. Top 5 home tech trends for 2021. Resi solutions that resolve UC and home recording demand seem to be up there in the top. This is a really good article from our friend Bob Archer over at CE Pro with you. One of the things that I found interesting about this and continue to find interesting about this is the number of products that come into the work from home environment that are hardcore commercial. You still have, and we always will, but you still have a wide variety of people who are sitting doing an interview without a microphone, without any decent lighting, holding their laptop and getting a wonderful shot. If you're just listening to this, it's that up the nose shot that everyone loves from working on a laptop. But what do integrators that either don't flirt with commercial or don't have a background at all in commercial, how do they learn and adapt to work in and provide work from home solutions with some of the proper solutions? How do you make that jump?
Well, for one, an integrator usually isn't going to delve into the category unless he gets demand. And guess what? The demand is there. And, I was in anticipation of this. I just kind of pulled together. Bob had done another piece just itemizing the work from home combination video microphone, unified communications collaboration systems that have come out for integrators to bring to the home market. And I have gotten emails and phone calls from integrators asking for what's a list of the options and solutions. But some of these companies, I'm going to just rattle them off real quick in their solutions. Besides the Crestron and Savant, of course, that have come out with these work from home solutions, but we have, Barco ClickShare, Biamp, Devio, ClearOne Aura, Clock Audio, D10, Key Digital, Logitech, Switch, MXL, Nareva, Phoenix Audio, Poly, work from home, and Yamaha. All of them now have targeted work from home solutions. And I bet you a lot of guys who are listening to this, who are just Resi guys, probably haven't heard of some of those companies. But now here's a whole influx of new manufacturers that are targeting you, the residential integrator, to provide these work from home solutions for your customer base. So if there's ever a time for you to look at it, it's now. And the other thing I like about it as I just mentioned, it introduces you to a new manufacturer and new solutions that possibly might fit your need. Now, of course, that's not discounting Crestron and Savant and the others who are old school in the industry and have come up with great solutions for work from home. But it just shows you it's driven by demand.
One of the things that I find surprising about it is I kind of get the same response that you get, where you'll hear from an integrator, hey, I heard about this thing. I know nothing about it. Where do I find more information? Whose job is it is it the integrator's job to try to dig through all of this? Because it's not like going from, basic remote systems to whole home remote systems, automation systems. That's in that lane. This can be a completely different realm. Is it the dealer's job to really try and figure this out? Where's the onus on suppliers and distributors to help guide integrators into this?
No, absolutely they can help guide, but I think it is ultimately the integrator's role. And I can count on one finger the number of integrators I know that have a person in their company who's called a chief technologist. Mm-hmm. And that person's responsibility within the company is just to seek out these new solutions and do the evaluation process. And it's tough. Integrators, we just mentioned all the operational things. They're HR guys, they're service people, they're confidants for their employees, they're schedulers, they're collectors of money, they're financial guys. They are wearing so many different hats. It's tough. And this should be the fun part, though. This should be the part that they enjoy the most, is digging into these new technologies and bringing them to their customer base. But there's only 24 hours in a day, unfortunately, for a lot of these integrators.
One of the other things that Bob touches on is recording studios and how there is an uptick. And I don't want this to I don't want people to instantly disconnect, because no, recording studios are not the normal thing that gets asked for. But there are more and more people that are playing with music and digging into things. Is this one of those similar situations, just like work from home, where there's a lot of opportunity, but to me, it's an interesting business decision? Is this one of those things that integrators should kind of try to dive into without a lot of quote unquote demand, right? Or is this something where you can add it once you get asked for it?
It's definitely a niche. I mean, I would put, when you talk about ResiMercial, and I know people are probably tired of CE Pro kind of pounding this term down their throats, but we kind of came up with this thought of how do we call this market? And there's so many different prongs to it. There's the home recording studio, like we just talked about. There's the bringing these commercially oriented telecom unified communication systems into the home for the home office. There is the MDU with a common space and an MDU that has really run like a commercial project. So there's a lot of prongs to this ResiMercial space. So I'd put that home recording studio in the same way that I just put in those other ones. It's a niche market. It's going to be a smaller niche market than those other ones. Certainly home offices are going to be the biggie. If you're into MDUs or you're in a place where you can do MDUs, then you're going to do MDUs. But if you're not, then that's a niche you would go into, just like you would go into home recording studios. But we just did a piece about the bass player, Ricky Phillips, for Styx, who Styx is not on touring anymore. And so now they've created this Styx Lounge that has 1 million followers. And he realized all of his gear at home stunk. So he had to upgrade his video. He got a multi-camera microphone setup. So obviously that's at the Styx level, professional musician level. But I think somebody told me I'm not a Billie Eilish follower, but her album was recorded in her brother's bedroom.
Yeah.
On a home recording setup. So
Well, and it's crazy because I've done a fair amount of work in the mastering aspect of recording studios. We never built a lot of recording studios, but we built a lot of mastering rooms for broadcast, and they're done exactly the same way. But when we were doing that in the early 2000s, the big press piece, and I'm going to date myself minorly depending on your music taste, but Linkin Park recorded their Theory album on their tour bus with Pro Tools on a laptop, and it was one of the first major records to be completely recorded not in a studio.
I hope the bus was parked.
I don't know. I should dig into that, but
Interesting.
It's very it's very interesting how that industry has shifted. And there's tons of EDM artists who they'll mix on a plane wearing headphones, and you can do a lot without having a real studio. So there's definitely a market there. Jason, let's move on to our last story of the day. This also comes to us from CE Pro. I think you wrote this one. Which major metros are primed for active remodeling spending in 2021? You're listing essentially Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Tucson, Charlotte, Phoenix top the list that are going to see the highest gains, and surprising most likely no one, New York City, Denver, Boston, and San Jose are all expected to have declines in remodeling spending. Jason, in digging through these numbers, and definitely go read the article, we can fairly accurately tie home technology projects to renovation spending. How do dealers best take advantage of those expected gains, hopefully in their home markets?
Yeah, I think we've been hitting on the subject already, and it's primarily, I think, work from home office is the lead. The network was this invisible thing that nobody cared about, and I can tell you, we upgraded the network here in my home once both my daughters were from home and I'm working from home most days. Everybody's in the same boat, and I think the integrator can now confidently lead with the network from a network solutions standpoint, this invisible thing that nobody saw before. But think about all the other areas that have been also amplified: outdoor entertainment, home theater, listening. All these areas have grown because of the pandemic. So obviously it depends on what your market is, but I think it's no surprise when you see Boston, Denver, San Jose, and New York on that list of declines, because of what you read about, that people now realize they don't have to live in expensive San Francisco or San Jose, expensive New York City, and they can work from home and have a better lifestyle, in the suburbs somewhere. And I would expect that trend to continue for a while. I saw a thing the other day: 59% of executives don't believe that San Francisco, the city of San Francisco, will return, quote unquote, to its previous economic level.
Wow. We talked about this in the late summer, early fall of last year, that we were starting to see renovation spending go through the roof. We were starting to see projects taking off like crazy, especially in the US. With 2021 hitting kind of the way it has, and we're not seeing restrictions necessarily lifting for international travel anytime soon. Do you think that is going to be a major aspect of this? That, again, you have people who can't travel, who can't go on vacation, who can't spend that money in those ways that they normally would, that are now going to dump that back into their home?
Yeah, I think the longer it continues, the more people are going to reinvest in their homes. I think one of the other things that's interesting, if you've seen, is the lumber issue, the price of lumber. If everybody goes to Home Depot and tries to get a 2x4, you'll see it. So I think that's going to maybe put some brakes on the new home construction market a bit, because how the housing is not just plain and simple, they're not going to be able to build as many if they can't get access to the lumber.
Yeah.
And so that's going to feed the renovation market even more so. So I would expect it to continue.
Awesome. Well, Jason, thank you for putting up with me for this whole this whole show. By myself, I had no one else to break it up. If people want to connect with you and learn more about CE Pro and find all those great articles, where can they do that?
Yeah, obviously they can go to cepro.com, and we do ask for a registration on the website. It's free, but you can register on the site. And then you can follow me on Twitter at Jason W. Knott.
Thanks again, Jason. It was so great to have you. So I'm going to bring in my good friend, Mr. Tim Albright. He's the founder of AVNation. We got a special side project for you today. How are you, Tim?
I am well. How are you?
Doing fantastic. So glad to see you. It's been a minute.
It has.
It has. So, Tim, what I wanted to talk to you about today was, if in case anybody missed it, KBIS was on last week, as well as the International Builder Show, and they both kind of fell flat. They're combined. Is that the understatement of the year?
So far.
Yeah, so far.
I mean, it's only February, but yes.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like only February up here, but notwithstanding. So KBIS and IBS had their virtual show. The education went off for the most part without a hitch. The trade show floor, unfortunately, did not. I heard reports of a couple people getting in and being able to see some stuff, and that a couple of the booths were fantastic and not like the traditional trade show booth. Virtual experience that we've come to expect, but a really forward-thinking, impressive opportunity for brands to connect until it didn't work, at which point it didn't matter how fancy and cool it was because no one could get in. So, Tim, a couple of the things that kind of came out of this in hindsight that I realized was, outside of, I believe it was GE and a couple other major brands, they were able to spin a portion of their trade show experience into a separate platform away from what the KBIS and the IBS platform was offering that was down. So I believe it was GE moved to Blue Jeans, believe it or not, and had that experience there. But a wide variety, and the majority of brands that were supposed to be exhibiting literally had nothing. They didn't update social. They didn't update their websites. Heck, some of them were still tweeting links to visit them. Yeah, he's shaking his head if you missed it. But more importantly, they didn't have a secondary repository available anywhere to get product information or anything like that. And I was on AV Trade Talk with Katie Bennett last week talking about this briefly. But when you saw that, when you were following that and saw how poorly executed, obviously the show seemed to be, there was obviously an issue there. We don't know what it was, and I'm sure at some point we will, but right now we don't. And that's, I don't want to beat a dead horse on that. But what does it mean for vendors who didn't have a backup plan? You and I have both exhibited at Infocom and ISE and CEDIA, and we've seen the lineup of vendors at the local FedEx or Kinko's getting flyers printed because something didn't ship.
Yeah.
Why is it that at trade shows there doesn't seem to be any backup plan? How do vendors fix that?
Well, there's two things there, and there's I'll take the virtual one first, and then we'll tackle the in-person one, because I'm naive enough to believe that at least sometime in the next 12 months we'll get together. Maybe not you and I, because Canada won't let me in, and America won't let you in. No,
well, they'll let me in.
So, but
I just can't come home.
You just can't. No, you just can't. So from the virtual side, yeah, you have to have a backup plan, and I'll tackle each one of those things in turn. First and foremost, you've got to streamline your communications internally. Somebody somewhere should have told the social people, hey, all of those tweets that you scheduled, thanks for doing that. By the way, take them all down now, because they're no good, right? Because the system is down. We cannot continue to send people there. Something internally should have been done there, and they should have had a backup plan for an alternative. So replace the tweets, replace this tweet with that tweet, sending them someplace else, whether that's BlueJeans or Zoom or Teams or whatever, even your own website, right? So create kind of a hidden page, a back end page that has your stuff. It doesn't have to have everything. I understand you're kind of not quite double doing the duty, but you are doubling up. But that's to protect yourself, not really to give the provider a safety net. You're giving yourself and your sales staff a safety net. But then, back up your assets, back up everything else like that. And then, I'm going to say something, and sometimes this is impossible. Get into your platform as early as possible. We have partnered with Future and with System Contractor News on this will be our second event, and we're talking about doing a third one now. Those folks that are sponsors that have access to our system, the system that we use, they can get in. I want to say it's a week or 10 days beforehand to build their stuff and to build their virtual booths. That way, we can make sure that it's working, right? That they can get in there. And they can also create, a duplicate site of that if they want. But from the in-person one, there's a couple things though, and you know this, that you've been around long enough. You know that there are certain things that happen, whether that's supply chain, whether that the product just isn't quite ready, right? It's not quite there the Friday before InfoComm.
Saying there's vaporware.
Well, I will say this. The manufacturers, when you and I first started going to InfoComm 15, 20 years ago,
it was terrible.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't, as the old saying, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting vaporware. They've done a really good job the last 10 years. Part of that, honestly, is because of commentary by you and me and, various other people in the industry that have tried to, held people's feet to the fire and said, look, you said this is going to be out. It's 24 months later. We're no longer going to talk about this until you're shipping. Yep. And so that's what's caused some of those last minute changes, as opposed to, cobbling something that looks like a gray box and putting it underneath glass and saying, yep, that's it over there. It does this, that, and the other. They just say, look, here's the info sheet on it or whatever. We're not quite ready for it. The other option there, especially if it's a marquee product, is to pull the plug on it earlier. Give yourself an earlier deadline. InfoComm now is the 27th through the 29th of October. Say, okay, by the end of September, manufacturer person, if it's not ready to go, it ain't getting. We're not planning on it, right?
It's not going in the truck.
Yeah, it's not going in the truck. It's not going in my booth. If you happen to get it, well, cool, groovy. We'll buy a podium from Freeman and stick it in the middle.
So let me kind of change directions for a minute, because coming out of this, it made me think of, and only because it failed. If it had gone off, I probably wouldn't have picked up on this. So thank you. The way in which we've demoed things and promoted things has obviously changed. And in residential, that showroom experience, we can debate whether that's a positive or a negative, or whether you should invest it or not for hours. But there's still a lot of things that when you demo them, if it can be experienced, it's much easier to sell. And you can watch those budgets inflate the better the demo is. Not all the time, but quite often. When I look at the way in which most integration companies pitch products and pitch solutions, it's pretty terrible. There's a massive opportunity to improve. I don't necessarily think that most integration companies, especially in the residential world, can go into a full virtual experience. There's not the cost to do that is pretty big. And
I would somewhat disagree with you, but go ahead.
Okay, so the cost might be prohibitive. How about that?
Might be.
But pre-show, we were talking about something that I saw, which was Nissan Studio, and it's Nissan, the car brand, and you can go log into their portal, and they have a library of highly produced clips that explain to you, like you're standing in the dealership in front of the vehicle, how something in the car works or the features of the vehicle. They also have the opportunity to do a live chat and do a live video conference with someone in a dealership or in their studio about a specific vehicle. And they're booking them, from 10 to 5 every day. That's obviously the far end of that experience. But you look at most integrators' websites or digital tools, and for the most part, they're either using a PowerPoint slide deck on an iPad. Ooh, we can build this, we can build this, we can build this. Or they're using, forgive me, but some lackluster marketing materials from a manufacturer. What's the opportunity for integrators to advance that? How do you change that sales cycle to have a quality digital interaction? Or is it unattainable for most companies?
Without knowing the platform that Nissan used, there's a couple things that are in my brain from the past couple CEDIAs, to be frank.
In general, or just right now?
Just in general, no, just in general. Period. Dude, it's been a long day, and we're still in the middle of COVID. So there's a couple companies that do a pretty decent job of doing inexpensive VR, right? And you don't have to have glasses. And so part of that experience, and this is just thinking outside the box and the things that are in my brain, getting your clients' dimensions and getting some pictures from them and what it is they're trying to do. And then creating a 3D rendering of their space. And let's pick on home theaters for a second, right? So create a home theater for them in the 3D space that they can walk around virtually. And kind of, you can walk them through it, and you can see where the projector will go and where the seats will go and what the speakers are and this, that, and the other. Granted, it's not sitting through a space. It's not sitting in a showroom. You can't really listen to the speakers because you're confined by their speakers, whatever their speakers are. Mm-hmm. They can't see the screen because, again, it's whatever screen you got is whatever screen they've got. However, you can give them the sense of the space. And the other part is making it interactive, right? And giving them the opportunity to see and feel products, doing little gift bags or boxes or kind of the Birchbox version of light switches or remotes and this, that, and the other, where you ship it to them and you give them the opportunity to touch and feel. It's returnable, and when you get it back, you do all the safety precautions and you sanitize it and all that jazz. But it gives them something physical and tactile to touch as you're talking to them, as you're walking through it with them, right? So these are ways that you can kind of break through beyond this whole video conferencing thing and give them something more, almost like a fourth dimensional experience with you as their advisor, and walking them through, that sales process.
Is that the direction that most companies should start focusing on? Is finding a way to do that to create a one-of-a-kind experience in the pre-sales situation? Because it's easy when you have a deposit to blow money on VR. But when you've got a client or a potential client that you don't know is a potential client yet, a random visitor to your website, how do you go about showing that experience without knowing client dimensions, without knowing something to ship?
I see what you're saying. And so that goes back to the sales funnel, right? And in marketing. And so you take them down this trail, this story, this journey. And at some point, they're going to become interested enough in what you've got to sell or this, that, and the other to contact you, to send you an email, to say, hey, can you give me a quote? Up until that point is if I'm understanding you right, that's what you're talking about. So you create generic ones, or you take old ones in previous jobs that you've done and say, okay, this is an example. This is a 3D rendering of a job that we did 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago. Do your own house, right? If you don't have any of those, do your own house for the 3D stuff. For the physical, tactile, giving them stuff, you're not, right? So that you're going to have to entice them other ways. And you can do that anywhere from, answering their questions and giving them content and giving them the answers to questions and helping them along their journey to the point to where either they feel comfortable enough with you and your expertise level that, again, they're going to click that call to action, that CTA, to get a hold of you to find out more information, or you haven't really done a good enough job to entice them to get their interest. They're going to go to somebody else's website. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, right? Because then you've kind of saved yourself the trouble and the expense of the time to get them there, right? Your website and your social and all of these assets should get your potential clients to your CTA. And once the CTA is clicked and taken over, that's when you get a little bit more involved. That's when you get a little bit more invested. That's when you send the Birchbox, right? And that's when you can pre-qualify, basically, is what we're talking about, up to the point of the CTA.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Tim. I appreciate you taking the time. If people want to connect with you, learn more about AVNation, where can they do that?
I have no idea. AVNation.tv, or you can LinkedIn and stuff. So
excellent. Thank you so much, my friend. For myself, if you'd like to connect with me, you can find me on Twitter at Matt D. Scott and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of our other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.